My name is Valerie, and today is my 18th birthday. I should be celebrating this milestone with joy and excitement about my future. I worked hard through high school, saved money from my coffee shop job, and got accepted to my dream college. Everything was looking bright until my parents handed me an envelope at dinner. Inside wasn't a card with birthday wishes, but a rental agreement charging me $1,300 monthly for my childhood bedroom. If you think that sounds outrageous, keep watching to see what I did next and how they ultimately got the short end of the stick. Before I continue, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button to support my channel. Growing up in the Carson household meant understanding the value of a dollar from an early age. My father, James, a meticulous accountant who tracked every penny spent, ran our home like a small business. His dark hair always perfectly combed, he would sit at the kitchen table every Sunday evening with spreadsheets and receipts spread before him, calculating the weekly expenses with intense concentration. Money management is the most important skill you can learn, he would tell me repeatedly, while I watched him work fascinated by the columns of numbers that seemed to make perfect sense to him, but looked like a foreign language to me at age 10. My mother, Diana, worked part-time selling houses for a local real estate agency. She had a warmer personality than my father, with her friendly smile and tendency to bring home small treats for us kids after a successful sale. But when it came to financial decisions, she inevitably deferred to my father with a simple, "Your dad knows best about these things, Valerie." Then there was my younger brother Thomas, 2 years behind me at 16. While I was expected to contribute to household chores, maintain perfect grades, and work part-time, Thomas somehow escaped these expectations. His soccer games were family priorities, his academic achievements celebrated with lavish rewards, while mine were met with approving nods and comments like, "That will look good on college applications." I still remember my 12th birthday, when I received my first allowance. Unlike my friends who simply got spending money, mine came with a ledger book where I had to record every cent spent and saved. "Real life doesn't hand out free money," my father explained as he showed me how to balance the little book. "The sooner you learn this, the better prepared you'll be." By 15, I was working weekends at Brewed Awakening, the coffee shop near our suburban Seattle home. I loved the independence of earning my own money, the friendly customers, and the smell of freshly ground beans that clung to my clothes even after washing them. More importantly, I loved depositing my paychecks into my savings account labeled College Fund. During my junior and senior years, I maintained a 3.9 GPA while working 20 hours weekly. I applied for every scholarship I could find, writing countless essays late into the night after finishing homework and work shifts. My hard work paid off with acceptance letters from several universities and a partial scholarship to my top choice, Washington State University. Throughout this time, my parents made occasional comments that, now in retrospect, seem like warning signs I should have heeded. When I was 18, I was paying rent to my parents, my father mentioned during a dinner conversation about college plans. "Learning to support yourself is the greatest gift we can give you," my mother added, nodding in agreement. I thought these were just their usual lectures about financial responsibility, not actual plans they were formulating. The tensions around college choices began during my senior year. When acceptance letters arrived, my parents questioned why I wanted to waste money living in a dorm when I could commute from home. "But WSU is 3 hours away," I pointed out. "I can't commute daily." "There are perfectly good schools nearby," my mother countered. "Why spend extra when you don't need to?" After several emotional discussions, they reluctantly agreed to my plan to live on campus. But the atmosphere at home grew increasingly strained. My father started making comments about the real cost of raising children, while my mother began asking me to contribute more to household expenses from my coffee shop paychecks. The week leading up to my 18th birthday, I noticed my parents having hushed conversations that abruptly ended when I entered the room. My mother seemed nervous around me, while my father had a determined look I recognized from past financial discussions. Still, I didn't connect these observations to what was coming. I was focused on celebrating my birthday, then preparing for graduation, and my first semester at college. I had saved nearly $6,000 through years of careful budgeting, birthday money, and coffee shop wages. It wasn't enough for 4 years of college, but combined with scholarships and financial aid, I felt proud of my contribution to my future. On the morning of my birthday, I woke up filled with excitement and anticipation. I had invited my best friend Sophia to join us for dinner, along with my grandparents and aunt. It would be a small celebration, but meaningful with the people I cared about most. Little did I know my parents had been planning a very different kind of milestone recognition, one that would fundamentally change our relationship and my path forward in ways none of us could have anticipated. I bounced downstairs on my birthday morning, still in my pajamas with my dark hair pulled into a messy bun. The kitchen smelled of pancakes and coffee, my traditional birthday breakfast since childhood. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," my mother said, flipping a blueberry pancake that sizzled in the pan. She kissed my cheek but avoided my eyes, something I noticed but dismissed as morning tiredness. My father looked up from his newspaper and coffee, offering a tight smile. 18 years, hard to believe my little tax deduction is all grown up. I laughed, used to his financial humor. "Thanks, Dad. Glad I could help with your tax bracket all these years." Thomas shuffled in, still half asleep, mumbling a "happy birthday" before slouching into his chair and reaching for the orange juice. The breakfast conversation felt strained, with unusual pauses, and my parents exchanging glances I couldn't interpret. My mother kept starting sentences, then stopping herself while my father checked his watch repeatedly. "Is everything okay?" I finally asked, cutting into my stack of pancakes. "Everything's fine," my mother answered too quickly. "Just thinking about how grown up you are now, a legal adult today." "With adult responsibilities," my father added meaningfully. I smiled, assuming they were leading up to giving me a special gift, or perhaps car keys, something I had hoped for but tried not to expect. After breakfast, I opened cards from relatives who had mailed them. My grandmother sent $50 with a sweet note about being proud of me. My uncle sent a funny card with $20 tucked inside. My aunt sent a beautiful journal with an inscription about recording my college adventures. "We'll give you our gift at dinner tonight," my mother said, clearing the breakfast dishes. "When everyone's here." I spent the afternoon getting ready for my celebration dinner, texting with Sophia about our summer plans before college started. Around 6, my grandparents arrived, followed by my Aunt Lisa and Sophia. We gathered in the dining room where my mother had prepared my favorite meal of lasagna with garlic bread. The dinner conversation revolved around my college plans and graduation. My grandmother beamed with pride when I mentioned my scholarship, while my aunt asked thoughtful questions about my intended major in business marketing. After dinner, and just before my mother brought out the birthday cake, my father cleared his throat and stood up. "Before we continue celebrating, Diana and I have something important to give Valerie on this special day." My mother disappeared briefly, returning with a white envelope that she handed to my father. My heart quickened, still hoping for car keys, or perhaps a special trip. "Valerie turning 18 is a significant milestone." He began, his voice formal, as if giving a presentation at work. "Your mother and I have given considerable thought to how best to prepare you for adulthood and independence." He handed me the envelope with a solemn nod. "This represents our philosophy on raising capable adults." The dining room fell silent as I opened the envelope, everyone watching expectantly. Inside was not a card or gift, but what appeared to be a legal document. As I unfolded it, the heading became clear: Residential Rental Agreement. I scanned the document with growing disbelief. It laid out terms for me to pay $1,300 monthly rent for my bedroom, plus 1/3 of all utility bills, including electricity, water, internet, and streaming services. The agreement included stipulations about tenant responsibilities, including specific chores and yard work. My hands trembled as I looked up at my parents, certain this must be some elaborate birthday joke. "You're charging me rent, starting now?" My voice sounded small even to my own ears. My father nodded firmly. "You're an adult now, Valerie. In the real world, housing isn't free. We're preparing you for life's realities." "But $1,300 for my bedroom." I looked around the table, seeking someone to confirm the absurdity. My grandparents looked shocked while my aunt pressed her lips together tightly. "That's the going rate for a room in this area," my mother said, not meeting my eyes. "We researched it." I flipped through the additional pages, finding an itemized list of household services with assigned values. Laundry access at $50 monthly. Kitchen privileges at $200. Parking space for my used Honda Civic at $75. "This is a joke, right?" I asked, desperately hoping someone would laugh and reveal the real gift. No joke, my father stated flatly. First payment due on the 1st of next month. We've given you a 2-week grace period to adjust. My grandmother spoke up, her voice concerned. James, Diana, this seems rather sudden. And that amount seems quite steep for a young person just starting out. We're teaching valuable life lessons, my father replied defensively. The rental agreement is just part of our gift. The real gift is preparing her for financial independence. I noticed a second page listing additional expectations: weekly vacuuming of all common areas, lawn mowing every Saturday, grocery shopping for the family, and cooking dinner 2 nights weekly. All this while paying $1,300 plus utilities. What about Thomas? I asked, gesturing toward my brother, who was staring at his plate, clearly uncomfortable. Will he get the same agreement when he turns 18? My mother patted my brother's hand. We'll address that when the time comes. His situation may be different with his soccer scholarship potential. The injustice burned in my chest. I had earned academic scholarships through hard work, yet was being penalized while my brother received different treatment. My aunt asked carefully, "Have you considered how this might affect Valerie's college savings? That's quite a significant monthly expense." College is important, my father acknowledged, but so is understanding financial reality. Many students work through college. It builds character. I thought of my carefully saved $6,000, now potentially redirected to bedroom rent instead of education. At $1,300 monthly, my entire savings would be gone in less than 5 months. My birthday cake was brought out amid uncomfortable silence. As everyone sang half-heartedly, tears blurred my vision. This milestone birthday that should have represented new beginnings instead felt like a betrayal from the people I trusted most. Later, when guests were leaving, my grandmother hugged me tightly, whispering, "Call me tomorrow, sweetheart. We need to talk." My aunt squeezed my hand meaningfully, and Sophia, who had witnessed the whole scene in shocked silence, promised to come over the next day. After everyone left, I approached my parents in the kitchen, where they were cleaning up. "Can we discuss this?" I asked, holding the rental agreement. Maybe find a compromise. I could pay some rent, but $1,300 plus utilities would wipe out my college savings before I even start classes. The real world doesn't offer compromises, Valerie, my father said without looking up from the dishes he was rinsing. Landlords don't negotiate because you have other expenses. But you're not landlords, I protested, my voice breaking. You're my parents. My mother touched my arm gently. Honey, we're doing what we believe is best for your future. You'll thank us someday for teaching you these lessons early. I retreated to my bedroom, the space that had always been my sanctuary, but now apparently had a luxury price tag attached. Sitting on my bed, I reread the agreement through tears, the reality of my situation sinking in with crushing weight. My parents had turned what should have been a celebration of my accomplishments and potential into a harsh financial lesson that threatened everything I had worked for. As I clutched my pillow that night, I knew nothing would ever be the same between us again. The moment my bedroom door closed behind me, the tears I had been holding back burst forth in quiet, heaving sobs. I muffled them with my pillow, not wanting to give my parents the satisfaction of hearing how deeply they had hurt me. My phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from Sophia, but I couldn't bring myself to respond immediately. When I finally did check my phone, her outrage poured through the screen. "OMG, Val, I can't believe what just happened. Are your parents serious? $1,300 for your bedroom? That's more than my sister pays for her studio apartment downtown." I wiped my tears and began typing. "They're dead serious. There's a whole contract with additional charges for laundry, kitchen use, everything." That's insane. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. Need to think. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay in my bed staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars I had placed on my ceiling years ago, calculating and recalculating my finances. $6,000 in savings. Expected summer earnings around $3,000 before college started. Scholarship covering about half my tuition. Financial aid covering another portion. The brutal math didn't work. If I paid my parents $1,300 monthly plus approximately $200 for my share of utilities, my entire savings would vanish before the end of fall semester. I'd have nothing left for book supplies or any unexpected expenses. Worse, I'd have nothing for next semester's expenses not covered by financial aid. Around 3 in the morning, I opened my laptop and began researching rental costs in our area. What I discovered made me even angrier. The average cost for a room in a shared house in our Seattle suburb was around $700, not $1,300. Even adding utilities and the special privileges they had itemized the market rate would be around $800 total. My parents weren't just teaching me a lesson. They were actively profiting from their own daughter. The next morning, I forced myself to appear calm at breakfast, thanking my mother for the birthday dinner, and excusing myself to meet Sophia at a nearby cafe. My father barely looked up from his phone, merely reminding me, 2 weeks until the first payment is due. Don't forget to plan your budget. Sophia was waiting when I arrived, her face a mix of concern and lingering shock. We ordered coffees and found a quiet corner table. I still can't believe they did this, she said, stirring her latte absently. Have they always been this way about money? They've always emphasized financial responsibility, I admitted. But this is extreme even for them. And the double standard with Thomas makes it worse. What did your grandparents say? They looked horrified. My grandmother wants me to call her today. I'm heading there after this. We spent the next hour discussing options. Sophia suggested I could live with her family temporarily, but with 4 younger siblings in a crowded house, it wasn't a sustainable solution. We researched apartments together on her laptop, finding the same rental rates I had discovered overnight. Later that morning, I visited my grandmother's house, where she welcomed me with a warm hug and freshly baked cookies, a comfort gesture from my childhood. I've been thinking about this situation since last night, she said, serving tea in her delicate floral cups. Did you know your father's parents did something similar to him? This surprised me. Dad never mentioned that. Grandmother nodded. When James turned 18, his father presented him with a bill for his upbringing and demanded rent. It was their way of forcing him to move out because they believed children should be fully independent at 18. So he's just repeating what was done to him? I asked, trying to understand. Perhaps. Patterns often repeat unless we consciously break them. She patted my hand. But charging you that much is unreasonable, especially when they know you're saving for college. She shared stories about my father's difficult relationship with his parents, how he had struggled financially through college with no family support, working multiple jobs while studying. It provided context, but didn't excuse his actions. What should I do, Grandma? I asked, feeling like a little girl again, despite my new adult status. First, don't make hasty decisions while emotional, she advised. Second, explore all your options carefully, and know that whatever happens, you have family who love you beyond your parents. After leaving my grandmother's, I called my school counselor, Mrs. Bennett, who agreed to meet me despite it being Saturday. In her office, surrounded by college pennants and motivational posters, I explained my situation. Unfortunately, this happens more often than you might think, she said, her kind eyes concerned behind her glasses. Parents who charge their children excessive rent or suddenly cut them off financially. She helped me review my financial aid package and suggested applying for emergency additional aid based on my changed circumstances. She also connected me with the university's housing office to explore cheaper on-campus options than the standard dorm assignment. Document everything, she advised. Keep copies of the rental agreement and any communications with your parents about this. It may help with financial aid appeals. That evening, I returned home to find my parents and brother watching television, as if nothing unusual had happened. My mother asked about my day in a casual tone that infuriated me, as if she hadn't completely upended my future just hours before. I retreated to my room and began making lists. Options, resources, people who could help. As the hurt slowly transformed into determination, I realized I wouldn't allow my parents to derail my carefully made plans. If they wanted to treat me as a tenant rather than a daughter, perhaps it was time to find landlords who would charge me fairly. Over the next few days, I maintained a calm exterior, while secretly making calls, sending emails, and researching alternatives. Each night, I added to my plans building a pathway to independence that my parents hadn't anticipated when they decided to teach me a lesson about adult responsibilities. They wanted me to learn about the real world. I would indeed learn, but the lesson might not be the one they intended to teach. This one has good natural light, the rental agent said, opening the blinds in a small studio apartment. Sophia stood beside me, both of us surveying the compact space with its kitchenette, bathroom, and main room that would serve as both bedroom and living area. It was the fourth apartment we had viewed that week, squeezed between my coffee shop shifts and Sophia's babysitting job. At $850 monthly with utilities included, it was significantly cheaper than what my parents were charging for my bedroom. "What do you think?" Sophia whispered as the agent checked something on her phone. "It's small but clean," I whispered back, "and close to the bus line for commuting to campus." The apartment was in a converted older home divided into 4 units with a shared laundry in the basement. Nothing luxurious, but it represented something priceless freedom. "I'll take it," I told the agent decisively. She seemed surprised, probably not expecting an 18-year-old to make such a quick decision. "Don't you want to check with your parents or—" "I'm an adult now." I said the words feeling more real than when my parents had used them against me. "I can make my own housing decisions." Later that day, I met with a potential roommate for the university dorms, a girl named Jamie, who had posted on the incoming freshman forum, looking to split costs. "My financial aid got cut unexpectedly," she explained over coffee. "I need to find ways to reduce expenses, or I might have to defer enrollment." We connected immediately over our financial challenges, discovering we were both business majors with part-time jobs. By the end of our meeting, we had agreed to room together and split costs on everything from textbooks to groceries. The apartment would be my summer solution until dorms opened, and Jamie would be my school year ally in keeping costs manageable. For the first time since my birthday, I felt a spark of optimism. That same week, I visited my Aunt Lisa, my mother's sister, who worked as a bank manager. She had always been the financially savvy one in the family, the person relatives called for advice on investments and loans. "I've been expecting you," she said, welcoming me into her stylish condo. "Your mother called yesterday, concerned you've been distant since your birthday." "Did she mention why?" I asked, curious about what version of events my parents were sharing. "She said they gave you an important life lesson about adult responsibilities that you didn't appreciate." Aunt Lisa's tone made it clear what she thought of this lesson. I showed her my parents' rental agreement and my alternative plans. "Smart moves," she approved. "But let's review your complete financial picture to make sure you're not missing anything." She helped me open a new bank account at a different bank from where my parents had account access. We set up direct deposit for my paychecks and created a detailed budget covering every expense I could anticipate for the coming year. "Your parents may not realize it," she said as we finished, "but they've actually accelerated your financial independence, not just your financial obligations. There's power in that." The following day, I took on extra shifts at the coffee shop, explaining my situation to my manager, Tina. "I need all the hours you can give me this summer," I told her while restocking the pastry case. Tina, a single mother who had put herself through college, nodded in understanding. "I can bump you to 30 hours weekly and possibly train you for shift supervisor by July. That would mean a $2 hourly raise." I accepted gratefully, even though it would mean early mornings and late evenings around my existing shifts. Every dollar mattered now. Between apartment hunting, roommate meetings, bank visits, and extra work shifts, I maintained a calm facade at home. I did my chores without complaint, ate meals with my family, and avoided any mention of the impending rent due date. My father occasionally made pointed comments about fiscal responsibility and preparing for the first payment, which I acknowledged with non-committal nods. My brother Thomas noticed the change in me, catching me alone one evening when our parents were out. "Are you really going to pay them that much rent?" he asked, leaning against my doorframe. "What do you think?" I countered, not wanting to involve him directly. He shrugged. "Seems pretty unfair. Dad never made a rental agreement for any of my friends who turned 18. "Interesting," I noted, filing away this information. "Don't worry about it, I have a plan." "You always do," he said with unexpected admiration. "That's why you'll probably be running some company someday while I'm still trying to figure out what to do with my life." His comment surprised me, as did the realization that beneath his privileged position in our family, my brother harbored his own insecurities. As my plan solidified, my parents added new house rules to accompany my rental status: a curfew of 11 p.m. despite my adult status, designated bathroom times to simulate apartment living with shared facilities, required family dinner attendance 5 nights weekly. The irony wasn't lost on me. They wanted to charge me as an independent adult while restricting me like a child. The rules only strengthened my resolve to execute my alternative plan. By the end of June, 2 weeks after my birthday, I had signed the lease on the studio apartment, increased my work hours, confirmed my dorm roommate arrangement, applied for additional financial aid, opened my new bank account, and created a comprehensive budget. All while my parents remained oblivious, confident that I had no choice but to accept their terms. As the first payment due date approached, their reminders became more frequent and specific. "We'll need the rent check by Sunday," my father announced at dinner 3 days before the deadline, "plus $207 for your share of June utilities." I nodded, focusing on my meal. "I understand." "Do you have the money set aside?" he pressed. "Proper planning prevents financial emergencies." "Everything's under control," I assured him, the words truer than he knew. The confrontation was coming, and soon. I felt both dread and a strange sense of calm. For the first time in my life, I was taking control of my own path, not just following the route my parents had mapped out. Whatever happened next would be painful but necessary, the unavoidable breaking point of a family dynamic that had been building toward this moment for 18 years. Sunday dinner had always been a Carson family tradition, more formal than weekday meals with proper place settings and conversation focusing on the week ahead. This particular Sunday, my parents seemed especially invested in maintaining an atmosphere of normalcy, despite the looming rent deadline they had established. My father carved the roast chicken methodically, his movements precise as he distributed portions. "Valerie, after dinner would be a good time to settle your first month's payment. I've prepared a receipt for your records." The casual way he mentioned it, as if he were reminding me about a normal family obligation, rather than an exorbitant fee for my childhood bedroom, made my heart pound with suppressed emotion. I took a sip of water to steady myself before responding. "Actually, I'd like to discuss that with both of you after dinner." My mother looked up sharply. "There's nothing to discuss. The agreement was very clear about payment terms." Thomas glanced between us, sensing the tension as he reached for the mashed potatoes. "Nevertheless," I said calmly, "I think we should talk." The remainder of the meal passed with strained conversation about an upcoming neighborhood barbecue and my father's golf game. As soon as Thomas finished eating, he made a hasty excuse about homework and disappeared upstairs, clearly wanting to avoid the confrontation he sensed was coming. In the dining room, my parents sat expectantly as I cleared my throat. "I've given your rental agreement considerable thought." I began using my father's formal tone deliberately. "After researching the rental market in our area and consulting with financial advisors, I've decided I won't be paying the $1,300 plus utilities." My father's face darkened immediately. "This isn't a negotiation, Valerie. You live here, you pay rent. That's how the adult world works." "You're right," I agreed, surprising him. "That is how the adult world works. But in the adult world, $1,300 for a single bedroom with shared facilities would be considered price gouging, especially since the market rate in our area is around $700. My mother shifted uncomfortably. "We included additional services in that price." "Yes, I saw the itemized list. $50 monthly for laundry access, $200 for kitchen privileges. Yet I'm also expected to do the family grocery shopping, cook twice weekly, mow the lawn, and vacuum common areas." In the adult world, tenants don't provide free services to their landlords while paying above market rent. My father's jaw tightened. "If you think the terms are unfair, you have options." "I do," I agreed, "and I've exercised them. I've signed a lease on a studio apartment for $850 monthly, utilities included. I move in tomorrow." The shocked silence that followed was almost worth the anxiety of the past 2 weeks. My father recovered first, his voice dangerously quiet. "You did what?" "I found alternative housing at a fair market rate. since you've made it clear that our relationship is now primarily a financial arrangement. I've made a business decision to go with the more economical option." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "You're moving out." "But college doesn't start for months." "My lease begins tomorrow. I've already arranged to transfer my mail." The preparations I'd made gave me confidence, though my hands trembled slightly under the table. My father pushed back from the table, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This is ridiculous. You're being childish and impulsive. Where did you even get the money for deposits and first month's rent?" "From my college savings." I said the words painful to admit. "The money I've been saving for years while working part-time and maintaining my grades. The savings that would now be depleted in a few months if I paid your rental fees." "We were teaching you responsibility," he shouted, abandoning his usual controlled demeanor, "by charging your daughter nearly twice the market rate for her childhood bedroom, by creating different standards for me and Thomas. That's not teaching responsibility. That's taking advantage." My mother reached across the table toward me. "Honey, maybe we can discuss a different arrangement. A lower amount, perhaps." My father cut her off. "No. She wants to make adult decisions she can live with the consequences. If she walks out that door, she's on her own." The ultimatum hung in the air between us. This was the moment I had anticipated and dreaded. My next words would permanently alter our family dynamic. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I said finally, my voice steadier than I expected. "I'll pack my things tonight." "You're bluffing," my father said, but uncertainty had crept into his tone. "You have nowhere to go." "My lease begins tomorrow," I repeated, "and I've already arranged help moving my belongings." My mother began crying openly now. "James, do something. She can't really be leaving." "She's made her choice," he said coldly, though I could see the shock in his eyes. He hadn't expected me to have alternatives. The lesson about adult responsibilities was backfiring in ways he hadn't anticipated. I stood up, my legs surprisingly steady despite the emotional earthquake happening. "I'll always be your daughter, and I hope someday we can repair this relationship. But I won't be your tenant under these terms." As I turned to head upstairs and begin packing, my father called after me. "If you leave now, don't expect us to bail you out when you realize how difficult the real world actually is." "I've already begun experiencing the real world," I replied without turning back. "It started the moment you decided to treat me as a revenue source rather than your child." In my bedroom, I began methodically sorting belongings, separating necessities from things I could leave behind. Through the floor, I could hear my parents arguing, their voices rising and falling. Once I heard my name and my mother's tearful protests. Thomas appeared in my doorway as I was folding clothes into a suitcase. "You're really doing this?" he asked, his voice cracking slightly. "I don't have a choice if I want to afford college," I explained, gentler with him than I had been with our parents. "The rent they're charging would wipe out my savings before the first semester ends." He nodded, understanding the math even at 16. "Want help packing?" His offer touched me unexpectedly. We worked together silently, him carefully wrapping my few framed photos and keepsakes in newspaper, me filling boxes with books and winter clothes I wouldn't need immediately. "I'm sorry they're being this way," he said finally, taping a box closed. "It's not fair." "Life rarely is," I replied, surprised at how adult I sounded. "But we make the best choices we can with the options available." Later, as the house grew quiet and my parents retreated to their bedroom without further confrontation, I sent a text to Sophia confirming our moving plans for the next morning. Then I lay on my bed one final time, surrounded by boxes and empty drawers, tears finally flowing freely now that no one could see them. I was 18 years old, legally an adult, but barely past childhood, forcing myself to leave home not from desire, but necessity. The birthday that should have marked a celebration had instead become the breaking point, the moment when financial lessons became family fractures. Sleep eventually came fitful and dream-filled. In the morning, I would begin my independence earlier than planned, but perhaps exactly when needed. The early morning sunlight streamed through my bedroom window one last time as I zipped my final suitcase closed. I had barely slept, caught between anxiety about my decision and determination to follow through. Outside, I heard a car pull up and recognized the sound of Sophia's mother's minivan. My phone buzzed with her text, "We're here whenever you're ready, no rush." I took one last look around the room that had been my sanctuary throughout childhood. The walls now bare where posters had hung, the bookshelf empty of the novels that had transported me to other worlds during difficult times. Only the glow and the dark stars remained on the ceiling, impossible to remove without damaging the paint. Downstairs, I found my parents sitting at the kitchen table, both looking as though they had slept as poorly as I had. My father's face was set in stern lines, while my mother's eyes were red and puffy. "Your friends are outside," my father noted unnecessarily, his voice flat. "Yes, they're helping me move." I stood awkwardly in the kitchen doorway, suddenly uncertain what the protocol was for this situation. Should I say goodbye? Hug them, pretend this was a normal departure? My mother stood up abruptly. "You don't have to do this, Valerie. We can work something out." My father placed a hand on her arm. "Diana, we discussed this. She's made her choice." "A choice you forced on her?" My mother's unexpected outburst shocked us all. In 18 years, I had rarely heard her contradict my father so directly. "We agreed on this approach," he reminded her firmly. "Teaching financial independence is parenting, not punishment," I interrupted before they could continue arguing. "My friends are waiting. I should go." My mother rushed toward me, enveloping me in a tight hug that smelled of her familiar lavender perfume. "Please call me. Let me know you're safe. This is still your home, whatever your father says." Over her shoulder, I saw my father's jaw tighten at her words, but he remained silent. Thomas appeared on the stairs, still in his pajamas, hair tousled from sleep. "You're leaving already?" I nodded gently, disengaging from my mother's embrace. "It's better this way, less complicated." He came down the stairs and gave me an awkward teenage boy hug, quick but sincere. "I'll text you later," he whispered. My father remained seated, but finally spoke as I turned toward the door. "When you realize how difficult it is to support yourself completely, we'll be here." The statement held both concern and condescension, his certainty that I would fail mingling with genuine worry. I paused with my hand on the doorknob. "Thank you for the 18 years you provided for me," I said carefully. "I hope someday you'll understand why I had to make this choice." Outside, Sophia and her mother were waiting beside the minivan, along with two more friends from school who had volunteered to help. We loaded my belongings in silence, the weight of the moment making conversation difficult. As we drove away, I watched my childhood home recede in the side mirror, my mother standing in the doorway, until we turned the corner and disappeared from view. My new apartment was modest but clean, a single room with a kitchenette along one wall, a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in, and a closet that would hold perhaps half my clothes. The furniture consisted of a futon that doubled as bed and couch, a small table with two chairs, and a dresser with a mirror. "It's perfect," I told Sophia when she asked what I thought, and despite the size and simplicity, I meant it. The space was mine, affordable, and represented freedom rather than exploitation. My friends helped arrange my belongings, transforming the impersonal space with familiar items. My books lined up on the single shelf, my favorite blanket draped over the futon, my small potted plants arranged on the windowsill. By afternoon, it resembled a home. When they finally left with promises to check on me soon, the silence was both peaceful and terrifying. For the first time in my life, I was completely alone, responsible only to myself. That first evening, I made a simple dinner of pasta and sat at my small table, the reality of my situation sinking in fully. No family voices calling through the house. No one to check if I had done my homework or chores. No one to tell me to turn out the lights and go to bed. The freedom felt both exhilarating and overwhelming. My phone buzzed periodically with texts from concerned friends and family. Thomas sent a brief message, "House feels weird without you. Dad's being super quiet." My grandmother called, her voice warm with pride and concern. "You're brave, my darling. But remember, brave doesn't mean you have to do everything alone. I'm here whenever you need me." My Aunt Lisa texted practical reminders about budget tracking and the importance of maintaining an emergency fund. The most surprising message came from my mother around 9 p.m. Your bedroom is still your bedroom whenever you want it. I love you. I didn't respond immediately to any of them needing time to process my emotions. Instead, I made a cup of tea and stood by my single window, looking out at the unfamiliar neighborhood that was now my home, watching strangers pass on the sidewalk below, each carrying their own invisible burdens and hopes. The coming weeks brought new challenges and unexpected freedoms. Balancing increased work hours with preparations for college, learning to grocery shop efficiently for one person, discovering which neighbors were friendly and which to avoid, finding the cheapest laundromat within walking distance when the building's shared machine broke down. My parents' initial silence gradually gave way to tentative outreach attempts. My mother called regularly, her messages ranging from practical questions about whether I had enough food to emotional pleas about missing me. My father communicated mainly through her, at first his pride apparently preventing direct contact. When my brother mentioned during a text conversation that our parents were struggling with household tasks previously assigned to me, I felt a complex mix of satisfaction and concern. According to Thomas, the lawn was growing too long, the living room rarely got vacuumed, and family meals had become haphazard affairs of takeout and frozen dinners. Dad had to figure out how to run the washing machine yesterday. He texted with evident amusement, turned all his white shirts pink. Beyond the practical challenges, my parents faced social consequences they hadn't anticipated. When my grandmother hosted her monthly bridge club, several of her friends whose children and grandchildren knew me asked pointed questions about why I had moved out so suddenly before college. The story spread through their social circle, resulting in uncomfortable conversations for my parents at church and neighborhood gatherings. My father's reputation as a financially savvy advisor was questioned by those who found charging one's child above market rent ethically dubious. These social repercussions affected my mother more visibly according to updates from both Thomas and my grandmother. She became quieter at community events, sometimes making excuses to avoid gatherings altogether. The distance between her and my father grew as she increasingly questioned their shared decision. Meanwhile, I was building a new life day by day. My manager at the coffee shop followed through on the promised promotion to shift supervisor, bringing the welcome pay increase. Regular customers who knew me asked about my living situation, many offering encouragement and occasionally small gifts like homemade cookies or plants for my apartment. Sophia visited often, sometimes staying overnight on weekends, helping transform my necessary departure into something that occasionally felt like the adventure it should have been at my age. We explored the neighborhood together, finding the best taco truck, the park with free concerts, the secondhand bookstore with a friendly cat. When my mother finally visited my apartment after 3 weeks of separation, her eyes widened at the small space, but softened when she saw how I had made it my own. "It's very you," she said, touching the colorful throw pillows on my futon. "Practical, but cheerful." We shared an awkward cup of tea, discussing neutral topics like the weather and Thomas's soccer practice. Only as she was leaving did she broach the real issue. "Your father misses you," she said, standing in my doorway. "He won't say it, but he does." "He knows where I live," I replied quietly. "He could visit or call any time." She nodded, understanding the unspoken message. The next step needed to come from him, not me. As July turned to August and college approached, I felt myself changing in subtle but significant ways. The nervous 18-year-old who had moved out in near panic had become someone more confident, more resilient. Financial decisions that once seemed overwhelming became routine calculations. The loneliness that had initially engulfed me in quiet evenings had transformed into peaceful solitude. I was becoming the independent adult my parents had claimed they wanted me to be, just not in the way they had planned. The lesson had been learned, but the teacher had lost control of the curriculum. And as my father would eventually discover, sometimes the student surpasses the master in unexpected ways. 6 months after moving into my small studio apartment, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, adjusting a new blazer purchased from a thrift store, but looking surprisingly professional. My hair was pulled back neatly, and I had applied minimal makeup to appear mature for my campus job interview at the university business office. The face looking back at me seemed older somehow, not just the 6 months that had passed since my birthday, but years of experience compressed into half a year of independence. Living alone had changed me in ways I was still discovering. My phone buzzed with a good luck text from Sophia, followed by one from my roommate Jamie, who had become a close friend during our first semester sharing a dorm room. Through careful budgeting and my continued work at the coffee shop, I had managed to cover my educational expenses without depleting my savings entirely. The transition to college life had been smoother than expected, perhaps, because I had already navigated the more difficult transition to complete independence. While other freshmen struggled with basic life skills like laundry and time management, I had already established routines that served me well in the academic environment. My business courses came naturally to me, particularly accounting and marketing. My professors noted my practical knowledge of budgeting and financial planning, unaware that these skills had been forged in the crucible of necessity, rather than mere academic interest. As I gathered my portfolio and headed out for the interview, my phone rang with my mother's weekly call. Our relationship had gradually improved over the months, evolving into something more like friendship between adults than the parent-child dynamic of before. "Just calling to wish you good luck today," she said when I answered. "Your grandmother told me about the interview." "Thanks, Mom. I appreciate it." The awkwardness that had characterized our early conversations had mostly faded, replaced by a tentative warmth. "Your father and I were talking last night," she continued, her voice careful. "We wondered if you might come for dinner this weekend. Thomas misses you, and I'm making your favorite lasagna." These invitations had become more frequent lately, usually delivered through my mother rather than directly from my father. I had accepted some and declined others, depending on my schedule and emotional energy. "I'll check my calendar and let you know." I promised non-committal but not dismissive. "He wants to talk to you," she added quietly, "about everything that happened." This was new. In our occasional interactions over holidays and family gatherings, my father had maintained a stiff politeness that acknowledged my presence without addressing our conflict. We had reached a tacit agreement to avoid the topic for the sake of family harmony. "What brought this on?" I asked, curious despite my caution. "Your Uncle Rob had a long conversation with him at Thomas's game last week. And I think, I think seeing how well you're doing has made him reconsider some things." After promising to consider the dinner invitation, I continued to my interview, my thoughts divided between preparation for questions about my qualifications and contemplation of what my father might want to discuss after months of emotional distance. The campus job interview went exceptionally well. My experience as a shift supervisor at the coffee shop, combined with my strong academic performance in business courses, made me a strong candidate for the administrative assistant position in the business office. The flexibility to work between classes and the higher pay than my coffee shop job would significantly improve my financial situation. That evening, I returned to my dorm room to find Jamie sprawled on her bed, surrounded by textbooks. "How'd it go?" she asked, looking up from her economics notes. They seemed impressed, said they'd let me know by Friday, but the director hinted pretty strongly that I should get my work-study paperwork in order. Jamie offered a high five. "Told you they'd love you. Nobody our age has a clue how to actually function in a professional environment." "Speaking of functioning," I said, changing into comfortable clothes, "my parents invited me to dinner this weekend. Apparently my father wants to talk about everything that happened." Jamie had heard the full story of my housing situation during late-night study sessions. "Are you going to go?" I sat on my bed considering. "Probably. It's been 6 months. Maybe there's a chance to actually resolve things instead of just pretending nothing happened." "Just remember you're negotiating from a position of strength now," she advised, sounding like the future business executive she aspired to be. "You've proven you can make it on your own. That changes the power dynamic." She was right. The frightened 18-year-old who had fled her parents' house half a year ago had been replaced by a confident young woman who had not only survived but thrived under challenging circumstances. Whatever conversation my father wanted to have would be between equals, not parent and dependent child. That Saturday, I drove my used Honda Civic to my parents' house for dinner, arriving precisely at the agreed time. Thomas answered the door, greeting me with a genuine hug. "Man, it's good to see you." he said, leading me inside. It's weird being the only kid in the house. The home looked mostly the same, though I noticed small changes. New curtains in the living room, a different arrangement of furniture. Signs of life continuing without me. My mother emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Perfect timing, dinner's almost ready. My father appeared from his home office, hesitating slightly before approaching. Valerie, you look well. College agrees with me, I replied simply. The initial awkwardness gradually eased during dinner, as Thomas chattered about soccer and school and my mother asked questions about my classes and dormitory life. My father remained quieter than usual, occasionally glancing at me with an expression I couldn't quite interpret. After dinner, when Thomas had disappeared upstairs and my mother was putting leftovers away, my father finally spoke directly. Would you join me in the living room? I'd like to talk. I nodded, following him to the familiar space where we had shared family movie nights and holiday celebrations. He sat in his usual armchair, while I chose the sofa across from him. Your mother thinks I owe you an apology, he began, his tone measured. She may be right. I waited, giving him space to continue without interruption. When we presented that rental agreement on your birthday, we genuinely believed we were teaching you valuable lessons about financial responsibility. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. What I've realized since is that there are better ways to teach those lessons than what we did. Charging above market rate for my childhood bedroom wasn't just a lesson, I pointed out quietly. It was an attempt to control my choices by making independence financially impossible. He looked momentarily startled by my directness, then nodded slowly. There's some truth in that. My own parents used similar tactics when I was young, though I told myself our approach was different. This acknowledgement, however partial, surprised me. My father rarely admitted to being influenced by his own upbringing. Your uncle pointed out that I might be repeating patterns without examining them, he continued, and watching you successfully manage on your own these past months has been illuminating. In what way? I asked. You've demonstrated more financial responsibility living independently than many adults I know. The lesson we thought we needed to teach was one you had already learned through your own initiative. The admission seemed difficult for him, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. Perhaps we underestimated you. My mother appeared in the doorway, clearly having been listening. What your father is trying to say is that we're proud of you, and we handled things badly. We miss having you here, but we respect the life you've built. Their words touched something deep within me, a wound that had been slowly healing but still needed this acknowledgement to fully close. I would have preferred to leave home on my own terms when the time was right, I said carefully, not because it was financially necessary to escape exploitation. My father winced slightly at the word exploitation but didn't argue. We've discussed that extensively since you left. Your mother has helped me see how our approach might have appeared from your perspective. It wasn't just about the money, I continued, needing to express feelings I had carried for months. It was the double standard between me and Thomas. The expectation that I would pay premium rent while still performing household duties. The timing on my birthday of all days. It felt like punishment for growing up, not preparation for adulthood. To my surprise, my father's eyes grew moist. In 18 years, I had rarely seen him display such emotion. You're right, he said simply. We handled it poorly, and I take responsibility for that. Your mother advised a different approach, but I insisted on the rental agreement. My mother joined us, sitting beside me on the sofa. We've been seeing a family therapist, she revealed, to understand why we made the choices we did and how to repair our relationship with you. And this news genuinely shocked me. My father, who had always dismissed therapy as paying strangers to tell you what you already know, had agreed to professional help. It's helping, he admitted, reading my expression, particularly in understanding how my own parents' financial strictness affected my approach to parenting. The conversation continued for nearly 2 hours, moving through difficult topics with newfound honesty. We discussed the hurt on both sides, the fear that had motivated their actions, and the unexpected consequences of my departure. The neighbors have definitely been talking, my mother acknowledged with a wry smile. Mrs. Henderson asked me directly if we had really charged you $1,300 rent. Your grandmother hasn't let me forget it either, my father added. She brings it up at every family gathering. As the evening progressed, Thomas rejoined us, adding his perspective on the family fracture and its aftermath. The house was super weird after you left, he told me. Mom cried a lot. Dad spent more time at work. Nobody talked about why you were gone, but it was all anyone was thinking about. Eventually, my father asked the question that clearly had been weighing on him. Would you consider moving back home? We would establish fair terms, of course. Perhaps something closer to what you're paying at the dormitory. I considered the offer carefully before responding. I appreciate that, truly. But I've built an independent life now, and it's working for me. I think moving backward would complicate the progress we're making in our relationship. Though disappointment flickered across his face, he nodded in acceptance. I understand. The offer remains open if your circumstances change. As I prepared to leave later that evening, my mother hugged me tightly. We're still learning how to be parents to adult children, she whispered. Please be patient with us. Yes, my father's handshake had evolved into an awkward but sincere embrace. I'm proud of you, he said gruffly. You've shown more maturity than we gave you credit for. Driving back to campus that night, I reflected on the journey of the past 6 months. The painful birthday surprise that had forced me into premature independence, the struggle to balance work education and basic survival, the growth that had come through necessity rather than choice. The relationship with my parents would never return to what it had been before, but perhaps it could evolve into something healthier based on mutual respect rather than authority and dependence. The wounds were healing, though the scars would remain as reminders of lessons learned on all sides. In my dormitory room later that night, I updated my budget spreadsheet with the expected income from my new campus job. The numbers looked better than they had since I started college, providing a small cushion beyond mere survival. As I prepared for bed, Jamie returned from her study group curious about the dinner with my parents. How'd it go? She asked, dropping her backpack by her desk. Any drama? Actually, it went better than expected, I replied, surprising myself with the realization. My father apologized in his way. They've been seeing a family therapist. Jamie raised her eyebrows. Wow, that's progress. It is, I agreed. Not a perfect resolution, but a start. That night I slept more peacefully than I had in months, the weight of family conflict beginning to lift from my shoulders. The journey to independence had been forced upon me earlier than expected, and under difficult circumstances, but the destination had proven worth the challenging path. The birthday that had seemed like an ending had actually been a beginning. The lesson my parents had intended to teach about financial responsibility had indeed been learned, though not in the way they planned. And in the process, we had all grown in ways none of us could have anticipated when they handed me that rental agreement 6 months earlier. Today marks 1 year since I moved out of my childhood home, 1 year of complete independence and self-reliance. As I look around my new apartment slightly larger than my first studio, but still modest by most standards, I can hardly believe how much has changed in 12 months. The journey began with tears and fear on my 18th birthday, when my parents presented me with a rental agreement instead of the traditional gifts or celebration. $1,300 monthly for my childhood bedroom, plus utilities and continued household chores, all while I was trying to save for college. The shock of that moment still sometimes revisits me in quiet moments, though its sting has lessened with time and understanding. What started as a desperate move to escape financial exploitation became the foundation for a confidence and capability I might never have discovered otherwise. Each challenge overcome added another layer of strength. Each month of successfully managing my own finances reinforced my belief in myself. My relationship with my parents has evolved in ways I never expected. After months of minimal contact, we gradually rebuilt communication on new terms. Family therapy sessions, initially attended reluctantly by my father, eventually became a forum for honest discussion about expectations, boundaries, and the complex emotions that had driven our conflict. I was trying to protect you from the financial struggles I faced at your age, my father admitted during one particularly emotional session. But I ended up creating exactly the situation I feared for you. My mother found her voice through this process. Two, no longer automatically deferring to my father's financial decisions. We should have discussed this with you prepared. You gradually not sprung it on you without warning, she acknowledged, especially not on your birthday. The family therapist helped us recognize the patterns that had contributed to the breakdown. My father's rigid financial expectations stemming from his own difficult childhood. My mother's conflict avoidance that prevented her from advocating for me earlier. My tendency to internalize stress rather than communicate my feelings directly. My brother Thomas visited my apartment regularly during this year, our relationship growing stronger, without the shadow of parental favoritism. At 17 now, he often sought my advice about college applications and his own eventual independence. You basically wrote the manual on how to adult while still a teenager. He told me during a recent visit, helping me assemble a bookshelf for my new place. Dad's already talking about reasonable expectations for when I turn 18 next year. The financial lessons of this year have served me well academically too. My business professors frequently use my budget planning as examples in class, unaware of the necessity that birthed these skills. My campus job in the university business office evolved into a paid internship with higher responsibilities and valuable professional connections. When I think about that rental agreement now, I see it differently than I did in those first painful weeks. Yes, it was excessive and poorly handled. Yes, it fractured our family temporarily. But it also catalyzed my growth in ways that might have taken years otherwise. The healing process continues with occasional setbacks and difficult conversations. Last month, when my father tentatively suggested I might want to move back home during summer break to save money, I was able to decline without anger or resentment. I appreciate the offer, I told him sincerely, but my independence is worth more to me than the cost savings. He nodded with unexpected understanding. I'm beginning to see why. There's value in building something entirely your own. My grandmother, who provided crucial support during those early days of independence, now beams with pride when introducing me to her friends. My granddaughter, Valerie, she says, who put herself through college while living completely independently. The most profound change isn't visible in my living arrangements or bank balance, but in how I view myself and my capabilities. The frightened 18-year-old who cried herself to sleep that first night alone has become a confident young woman who knows she can handle whatever challenges arise. Financial setbacks that once seemed catastrophic now register as manageable problems with practical solutions. This morning, I received an unexpected email from my father. No lengthy text, just a link to a financial education program he thought might interest me, followed by 3 words that would have seemed impossible a year ago. You inspire me. Those simple words represent the distance we've traveled from rental agreement to mutual respect, from parent-child hierarchy to adults acknowledging each other's strengths. The journey hasn't been easy. There were nights I questioned my decision, mornings I woke up wondering if pride had driven me to unnecessary hardship. There were financial close calls that had me counting pennies until payday, and lonely holidays when family tensions remained too raw for comfortable celebration together. But looking back now, I wouldn't change the path difficult as it was. Sometimes the hardest choices lead to necessary growth. Sometimes relationships need to break before they can be rebuilt stronger. Sometimes independence must be claimed rather than granted. If my story resonates with you, perhaps you're facing your own difficult choice between comfort and growth, between familiar patterns and necessary change. Remember that your worth isn't determined by how others value you, but by how you value yourself. Building boundaries isn't selfish, requiring respect isn't unreasonable. The rental agreement meant to contain me ultimately freed me. The lesson intended to humble me instead empowered me. And the parents who thought they were teaching me about the real world ended up learning alongside me. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice that ultimately led to unexpected growth? Share your experience in the comments below. If my story helped you in any way, please hit the like button and subscribe to support this channel. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the most painful beginnings lead to the strongest futures.